What if the things that feel good right now aren't actually making life richer, but quieter? Not louder, quieter. Most days, nothing is obviously wrong. You get through the workday. You eat, you scroll, you relax. It all works. And yet, sometimes there's this faint sense that you're managing life more than living it, like everything is running. But something isn't moving. This isn't about giving things up, and it's not about becoming better. It's about noticing something most of us were never taught to notice. So this isn't a video to half watch, because what matters here doesn't shout. It only shows itself when you're willing to stay long enough for the noise to settle. At some point, most of us learned a quiet rule. If something feels uncomfortable, fix it. If something feels empty, fill it. If something feels dull, stimulate it. No one sat us down and explained this. We picked it up the way you pick up an accent, from home, from school, from screens, from watching what normal adults do when they're tired or bored. Think about a long day. You come home. Before you even notice how your body feels, your hand already knows where the phone is. Not because you decided, because the movement is familiar. Or think about waiting, a line at the grocery store, red light, 5 quiet minutes between meetings. Notice how quickly something reaches for relief. Music, news, snacks, small pleasures that smooth the moment. None of this is wrong, it's human. But here's a question worth sitting with. When did relief become the default response to simply being here? Most of these patterns formed early, long before we had language for them. They weren't choices, they were adaptations. Life rewards this kind of behavior. It keeps things moving, it keeps mood stable, it keeps productivity high. So the habit deepens without asking permission. And then one day, nothing dramatic happens, no crisis, no breakdown. Just a subtle noticing that the moments between one pleasant thing and the next feel thinner than they used to. Not painful, just rushed. If these patterns were learned, not chosen, what else might be running quietly in the background without ever being questioned? You don't have to answer that now. Just notice what comes up when the question doesn't need fixing. Have you noticed how often relief is scheduled for later? Just get through this week, then I'll rest, finish this project, then I'll enjoy myself. Once things settle down, then. It sounds responsible, even mature. At work, it looks like pushing through lunch, telling yourself you'll eat something good tonight. In relationships, it sounds like, after this phase, we'll have more time. With yourself, it becomes, I'll slow down when life allows it. Later turns into a quiet promise, one that's rarely questioned. And usually, nothing goes wrong right away. Bills get paid, deadlines are met, people even compliment your discipline. But pay attention to what happens in between. Those small pauses during the day don't open up anymore. They get filled automatically. A quick check, a quick bite, a quick distraction. Not because the moment is unbearable, but because you've learned not to stay with it. Here's the subtle shift. When comfort is always postponed, the present moment becomes a hallway, something you pass through, not a place you stand. Over time, the body adapts. It stops expecting ease here. It learns that calm lives somewhere else, in the future, in the next reward. Nothing dramatic breaks, something quieter happens. The ability to arrive starts thinning out. You may still feel pleasure when it comes strong, bright, convincing, but notice how quickly it asks for more. Another hit, another reason, another, just this once. If the habit of later has a cost, it doesn't show up as pain. It shows up as absence. And that absence is easy to miss when life looks successful on the outside. So the question isn't whether postponing works, it often does. The question is what it quietly trains you to stop noticing while you're waiting for the right moment to arrive. Let's slow this down with something very ordinary. Right now, notice your breathing, not to change it, just to notice. Most people will say, I know I'm breathing. Of course you do. But knowing that you're breathing and actually feeling the breath are not the same event. At first, the mind steps in, it names things: inhale, exhale, calm, shallow, fine. That's understanding, clean, efficient, familiar. But stay a little longer past the labels. There's movement you didn't describe, a slight expansion, a release that isn't symmetrical, a rhythm that doesn't match the words. For a moment, the commentary lags behind, and in that gap, something else is there. Not dramatic, not spiritual, just present. This is where confusion often begins, because the mind wants credit. It wants to say, "I get it." But getting it doesn't change anything, feeling it does. The illusion isn't that we don't understand enough. It's that understanding feels like arrival. And yet, notice this, when attention drops out of explanation even briefly, there's no hunger in that moment. Nothing to add, nothing to improve. The moment is full without being exciting. You can't hold this, the mind will return, it always does. But now you've seen the difference between describing water and being wet. Once that's noticed, something subtle shifts. Not an answer, just a new sensitivity to when you're thinking about life, and when you're actually in it. Notice how this pattern shows up when emotions rise. Excitement, for example, a compliment lands, a message arrives, a small win at work. Almost immediately, the mind leans forward, replay it, share it, turn it into something that lasts. The feeling was alive for a moment, then it became something to protect. Or take frustration, a disagreement, an email that hits the wrong tone. The body tightens before the story forms. Thought jumps in to justify, to rehearse, to defend an image of yourself. It feels like thinking things through, but look closer, it's a reaction trying to stabilize itself. Socially, this gets rewarded, staying sharp, staying relevant, knowing where you stand. There's pressure to always be on. Even rest gets optimized, vacations become content, silence becomes suspicious. Inside, this creates motion, planning, measuring, adjusting. Not because something is wrong, but because stillness has no clear payoff. Here's the quiet noticing. In all of this movement, what's being protected isn't happiness. It's continuity, the need for experience to keep proving itself. And yet, in rare moments, when emotion is felt without being used, without being extended or explained, there's a different quality. The feeling comes, it goes, nothing collapses. Those moments don't stand out, they don't build a story. But they leave something behind, a softness, a sense that life didn't need to be pushed. If that's possible sometimes, without effort, what determines when experience gets squeezed, and when it's allowed to breathe? Have you noticed how reaching feels in the body? Not the object you're reaching for, the movement itself. It might show up as a slight lean forward, a tightening in the chest, a sense that this moment isn't quite enough yet. Most of the time, that movement goes unnoticed. Because it works, you reach, you get something, relief follows. But occasionally, the reach pauses, not because you decided to stop, just because nothing needed to happen right away. Think of those rare moments, standing in the shower, driving without music, sitting outside before checking your phone. Nothing special is happening, and yet, the body settles. There's no spike, no drop. Just a quiet sense of being here, without negotiating the moment. In that softness, something becomes clear, not as a thought, as a contrast. The absence of grasping has a different texture than satisfaction. Satisfaction feels like arrival followed by hunger. This feels like a space. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't promise anything. And because there's nothing to repeat, the mind can't turn it into a habit. It comes and goes unimpressed. If this quality is already accessible, without effort, without achievement, what actually pulls us away from it most of the time? That question doesn't need answering. Just noticing where the reach begins might already be enough to change how the next moment unfolds. There's nothing here to take with you. No idea to carry, no rule to remember. Just a faint recognition that something in you doesn't need to be fed to stay alive. Most of life trains us to reach, to improve the moment, to move on quickly. And yet, every so often, when the reaching softens on its own, what remains isn't empty. It's quiet, unimpressed, strangely sufficient. If anything has shifted, it won't show up as a decision. It may appear later, in a pause you don't rush through, in a moment you don't immediately fill. Not because you're trying to be different, but because something else is now noticeable. So as this ends, there's only one gentle curiosity to leave you with. In the next ordinary moment, what happens if nothing is added?